Hello everyone, I'm Brian, welcome back, let's go and continue.
Decision, how much of what to do. Man's problem is, he just wants to be one step ahead of somebody, even if his life is ruined. Generally for a woman, her experience of life is more important than what somebody else is doing. So she's making a wiser choice.
Typical man answer, I'll say that. I was trying to find where I was at and I read that. I had something to say about it, but I'll keep it to myself. Well, I'll say this, in the Western world, not so much anymore. Especially when I look at certain human psychology studies. But again, that's relatively recent. It is something that's happened in the Western world for the most part, from my understanding. Again, not all women, but a lot of at least the Western women, at least in the United States, it's not that. It's quite the opposite, where they see. Again, I think I talked about this. It happens to everyone, but I think it happens to women a little bit more. Again, no scientific study for this, but a lot of people see like glamorous lifestyle and they want that, and they won't necessarily accept anything but that. And the reason why I say this probably tends to happen to women more is because, and well, at least in terms of the dating, excuse me, women have a lot more options than men because men tend to be the pursuers and women tends to be the pursued. So therefore, you'll see women who are generally good looking or average and above average are being pursued. So when there's a lot of people pursuing them, they think they have a good shot at a glamorous lifestyle because they just have to look for that one guy or whatever. When that one guy is like has all the money and status and whatnot, are just going around sleeping with a whole bunch of, yeah, I guess that's all a different story. But that's what you kind of see in the Western world, and perhaps more maybe more specifically in America. It doesn't happen. It's very small number of them, but then it tends to be in the more densely populated areas. But again, I'm wondering if this development of like when you're no longer worried about food, shelter, and water, when we start changing. Well, we never really change who we are, but we just who we are is exaggerated because we no longer have to worry about the three major things. So, as men and women, we exaggerate what we search for in the past, which seems to be true. So, whatever men desired, if it weren't for the three things, get exaggerated, and same thing with women.
Sadhguru, our Hippocratic oath tells us to keep our patients first, and our responsibility being to alleviate their suffering as well as their pain. But in certain cases, like in end stage of cancer or other cases, we feel like there is no cure, and more importantly, the patient is suffering. His suffering is more unbearable. So the question here is that, do you think we can recommend euthanasia for patients like these, despite it being against our moral code?
Ooh. I mean, this is something that Sadhguru did talk about earlier in this video about, like, when it's time to go kind of thing. But, what if they're suffering and they're not going soon enough? That's a really terrible thing to say. It's like, oh, they're suffering and they got 8 more years of suffering. I mean, my gosh, what do you do in that situation? There was a doctor in the United States called Kevorkian, I believe, Dr. Kevorkian, I think. Anyway, he did this kind of thing for patients who they made sure that they were sound of mind, that this is in fact what they wanted. I just don't know like the things behind it because he went around doing that to people who are sound of mind who willingly wanted it. I don't know about that. Like for like people who like say who will live 8 years and they're just in constant torture and they have to be constantly medicated with morphine and stronger and stronger and stronger drugs because their body just adapts and are able to combat or are very used to the morphine drugs. Is that really a way to live? Well, I mean, let's see what Sadhguru has to say about that because I don't know. I'm like for it if we know without a doubt that a patient is literally suffering, and even the strongest drugs that we have can no longer sedate the pain. That the oxycodone I believe is one of the strongest one. It's very addicting, and that's why they got rid of it, perhaps because it's very strong too. But morphine is one as well, which also is addicting. But I think if you take too much of it, your body either gets used to it or it starts able to combat it. But either way, it starts being less and less effective, to the point where you're just suffering. I mean, what do you do at that point? You know, do you really want to live out 7 or 8 more years of just constant torture, pain every single day?
I think we already went through this in a certain way, but Hippocratic oath, Hippocrates oath is not about simply treating the patient. Hippocrates oath is about treating another human being as a human being first, not as a client. These days, in the West, doctors refer to their patients as clients. That's against Hippocrates' oath.
I don't know that for sure. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, you should treat them like human beings, but I think the reason why they call them clients is just another name. You don't. It's like, hello, human being. You know, you're not gonna say that to that. It's like you're gonna say, this is my client. You're not gonna say, this is my human being. This is my client. Meaning that there's a relationship of a professional and your person. So I wouldn't say that exactly, but I think I don't understand what it's trying to say. Is that when you say they're their client, there's a disconnect, and you don't see them as a human being. But I don't think that's the case. And the problem is a misunderstanding. And maybe there are some doctors who sees that, but at the same time, like Sadhguru said earlier in this video, that there has to be a separation between yourself and the client, because of doctors, nurses. There is a high potentiality of death in the hospital, so there has to be a disconnect. Otherwise, not many people will survive being a doctor or nurse because of the amount of, I'm sure, emotional things. I don't say trauma, but emotional things that go on in the hospital. You know, you have kids dying, you have adults dying, and you have elderly that's dying, you know, and if you don't have that disconnect, many doctors and nurses will not survive being a doctor or nurse. So to say to treat them like a human being, yes and no, because there's going to be certain things where you have to have that disconnect. Otherwise, we're not going to have any good doctors. Everyone's going to be fresh off the boat, and to sort to say, you know, that they just graduated and lack experience, and then once they go through enough deaths, they're going to also get out because it's just too much of an emotional thing. I don't want to say trauma, but just thing.
It is another human being who's in some way fallen, and you have a certain capability. So, definitely, making him well is your basic humanity. So, they're trying to build an ethic to ensure that you don't lose your fundamental humanity, that's all the oath is about. Rest of it, there is a science to it, it has to go by that. And talking about cancer, if you look at it more carefully, far more intuitively if you look at it, there are many solutions to it. These solutions are not found simply because we are looking at it on the surface. When I say on the surface, because the entire allopathic system of medicine is symptomatic in nature, we are looking at the symptoms and trying to treat it. Now slowly science is going towards genetics and other dimensions, cellular sciences and stuff. They're trying to look at the source of it, but the source is even deeper than that. Is it true? Is it true? You were not born like this, you were born like this. Slowly you became like this. How did you become like this? The food that you eat. If you… because it's mango season, I'll choose the mango, okay? You eat a mango, mango goes inside and slowly becomes a man or a woman. Huh? Mango is not a man or a woman, isn't it? But you eat this, it goes inside and becomes a young man or a young woman. So there is an intelligence within this. There is an intelligence intrinsic to this which is capable of transforming a mango into a human being. Suppose I took a mango in my hand and made a human being out of it. Who would you think I am? Hello? God, isn't it? So whatever you call as God is essentially that which is the source of creation. Isn't all of you capable of doing this? You take a mango in your stomach and make it into a human being, are you not doing it? Hello?
I guess the difference is whether you're doing it consciously or unconsciously, or that's not the right word. Like your body, you don't have to tell your body, like, okay, all right, that piece of broccoli I just ate, please come on, be a brain cell. You know, obviously, you know, I get what he's trying to say there. I'm stupid and I make jokes all the time whenever I think of stuff, but you know, you don't control what your body does with the food and process. But I think he did say the fact there's an internal intelligence in the body that's creating all these things that you turn food into parts of your body. And I don't know. I just think of that as like, yes, broccoli. Let's become smarter.
Or take just about anything and make it into a human being. So the source of creation is throbbing within you. The question is only, do you have access or not? If you had access, one who built the whole machine, can't he do a repair job for you? If you buy a car, suppose there is some problem, would you prefer to go to the manufacturer or the local tinker? Huh?
The manufacturer.
Who do you want to go? Really? Do you go to the manufacturer's representative showroom or do you go to the local tinker? They've all vanished largely, isn't it? People who go to the local tinker, you will see their cars are going like this on the road, like this. Those who are going to the showroom for their service and everything, they are the ones who are zipping around, isn't it so? So the manufacturer is sitting here. Well, if some damage happens from outside, then you go to the tinker. That is, if you get an infection from outside, you must go to the doctor, there is no other way. Rest, whatever happens from within, if as a society, as a population, as a generation of people, if we are willing to spend enough time on this, if we are willing to look at it as profoundly as it demands, depending upon how much value you set upon your life, you will pay that much attention, isn't it? If you have valued your life enormously, then if you pay enough attention, you find access to that which is a source. So, it will naturally do its things. You got an infection, you go to the doctor. Rest, you are manufacturing from within, isn't it? Most people are sick by choice. This may sound very cruel, but that's a fact. They're sick by choice because right from early childhood, they've been taught if they get sick, they will get what they want. Yes. Even when you were a child, don't you remember? If you're jumping with joy and screaming, they'll come and shout you down. You just have to sit and go poo, 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 like this. Suddenly they'll do mo, 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 everything for you. So even now, most people are doing this. Most people are doing this, when they want to get attention, they get sick. After some time, initially what starts as a play, sometime later it takes over. The play goes on without your help. Genuinely people become sick.
Thank you, Sadhguru, for answering our questions. We'd love to continue, but we have a lot of questions pouring in from the social media, and a couple of them are here waiting to be answered. So, coming to the first question.
This question is from Roshio. I am a doctor and I notice these days kids are being bombarded with antibiotics, steroids and immunity boosters. Is it possible to keep kids healthy with a good immunity by natural means?
What kind of question is that? Obviously, yes. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some kids that are immune compromised, like it's something that's genetic. But yes, I mean, also, you know, kids who get sick is perfectly fine and actually good. depend on the sickness, of course. Not like some life-threatening sickness, but just being sick from the cold or whatever is perfectly fine. And the reason why I say this is because of what I've heard from other doctors too. And there's a thing actually going around in the Western world, either the Western world or United States, where the immunity system is getting weaker. And the reason for that is because we're being too safe with kids, washing the hands all the time, not eating dirt, no, but washing the hands all the time, keeping everything super nice and clean. Your immunity system doesn't get to fight off many bacteria, so it doesn't become stronger. It doesn't develop very many immunities because when you get sick, your body recognizes the disease, it fights it off, and the next time you become sick from that same disease, you tend to fight it off better because your body has already fought it off before. Cold is a bit different because it mutates so often and has many different kinds of mutations, so you still get sick from it, but you're usually fine. so so there's this thing in the Western world so far where kids are becoming allergic to a lot of things because they're not introduced to things at a younger age. Like there's a lot of peanut allergies, just allergies in general. So by pumping antibiotic steroids and keeping kids healthy, like in a clean environment, it's not really great. Obviously, you need to watch what your kids put in their mouth, like really, really bad stuff. But generally speaking, it's pretty healthy for kids to get sick. That's a weird way to say that.
Definitely possible, but it depends on various things. One important thing is, if we want to talk about India alone, one problem with India is there is not enough natural spaces, nor is it there in the culture for people to take their children to natural spaces. They're all growing up in bird's nests. But bird grows up in a nest and then flies. I'm calling an apartment a bird's nest. It's a bird's nest, isn't it? Because in that limited space, without touching the soil, without touching natural air and without being exposed to the various aspects of nature, leaving the many other things, the fundamental thing is the five elements of water, soil, air, fire and space. These five things are the basic composition of this body. We have, in the basic practice of yoga, is called Bhuta Shuddhi. That is, you cleanse these five elements within you. If these five elements are functioning well, everything else will function well. So the fundamentals of yoga comes from what is called as Bhuta Shuddhi. If you attain to what is called as Bhuta Siddhi, that you attain to certain mastery over any one of them, suddenly you live in a heightened level of existence. So can everybody do this? Yes, with simple awareness they can do it. I didn't keep water for you. Simple thing, water is kept in a copper vessel. Just something as small as that can make a big difference. And how you treat the water. Today there is enough science to tell you that water, soil, food has its own memory. What kind of memory you create, how you receive the food. The same food will do one thing in one person and completely different things in another person, depending upon how you receive it. So, culturally we have these things, if food arrives, you sit there, take a minute, bow down to the food, not to some god, to the food, because it's your life, isn't it? Hello? What's sitting in your plate is not something else, it's your life, yes or no? Right now what you're breathing is your life or no? Did you ever… No? There. Something that you've not seen. The soil that you walk upon, the water that you drink, the air that you breathe, the food that you eat, this is your life. This is the source of your life right now. So in this culture, we always approach them in a certain way, not in a wanton way. When I say in a wanton way, some time ago I was just driving in Washington, D.C., in a very, what to say, an upscale area where all the top financial offices and all those kind of things are there. It's around 12:30 in the afternoon, I'm driving, and by looking at the men and women who are standing there, they're all well-dressed and they're just professionals working in financial companies and management companies and this kind of people. They're all standing outside, and the food, their idea of nature is this: food is being sold on certain, what to say, not a proper restaurant, but it's being served on the street. So everybody is standing, and of course, you know, that burger, which is actually made for a hippopotamus, because it's this thick. How do you eat this? I don't have a mouth like that. How do you eat something which is this thick? But that's how you're supposed to eat. They're all standing and hacking at their food like this. I just saw this. If my mother or my grandmother has seen this, she would say they're eating like dogs. Yes, but this is our modern life, standing, mouth full and talking. You won't believe this. We used to do programs, now we have our own centers in America. Otherwise, earlier we used to do residential programs in summer camps, which the schools use. Everywhere when I first went, I see for choking. When you're having in the dining halls, if choking happens, what to do? Emergency choking, this thing. In every school, this exercise is taught in America. How many cases do you get in India of choking on food? Not at all, isn't it? I have not seen a single person in my life choking on food. I didn't understand why will choke, but every year so many children die on choking. Why? Why? Do they have a smaller gullet or something? Nothing like that. Then I saw the problem is you are eating and talking at the same time. We were always taught, when we are eating, you don't open your mouth to speak, you shut up and eat. Hello? Focus on what you're eating, it's your life, you eat properly without talking to anybody. Mouth full, you're talking and you're choking on the food that you eat. Generally, in this tradition, it's considered the worst kind of death that can happen to you is you choked on your own food. So, like this, in the name of modernity, we are bringing these kind of practices. We don't treat the food that we eat properly. It's not just the taste, it is not just the way it's prepared, it's also the way you receive it. Very important. So, your devotion is for a God that you have not seen. But if I don't give you food for 5 days, if even God appears, what will you ask? Food only. So water that you drink, food that you eat, the air that you breathe and the soil that you walk upon, if you develop a certain sense of emotion towards it, they will behave differently within you. I know immediately, once this thing goes out, there will be activists who are in this country who will scream and yell and say this. But for those idiots, even the Western scientists have come out and said, the human consciousness has a huge impact on the food and water that we consume and even the air that we breathe. There's substantial evidence for that. As you said, even though we have the wrong skin, slowly we're getting around.
Not sure, I guess that seems like Washington D.C. is the northeastern part of the United States. I know, generally speaking, the culture in America is not to talk or chew with your mouth full. So you swallow what you have to eat first and then you talk. You don't talk while your mouth is full. Now, again, I think the population of the U.S. is like the third or fourth largest population in the U.S., so population in the world, so I wouldn't doubt there are people out there who talk with their mouth full. But yeah, no, it's I think it's considered relatively rude to chew with your mouth open or to talk with food in your mouth. Now, it's not to say that you can't talk with food in your mouth, but it's usually just to make a quick, it's not to have a conversation, but just to make a quick answer or make a quick statement, and you generally cover up. You don't go, "Hi, what you doing?" You know, you don't do that. You kind of like, you're like, "Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about." And you kind of It's, I guess, don't show your food. Again, I don't know how commonly that's taught, but I know that tends to be the culture. At least not to talk with food in your mouth, not to chew with your mouth open. That's the typical culture in America, at least as far as I can recognize. Now, where I've not lived in America, which is only, well, everywhere mostly. I lived in a few states, 2 states out of 50. So I've been to the I've been to 3 states though. Anyways, that's not typical, but maybe it is in the Northeast or Washington D.C.
There's an add-on question from my side. The antibiotic resistance is increasing day by day, and Ayurvedic practices are declining day by day. So, how do we create a perfect amalgamation between the practices of Ayurveda and allopathy?
Ayurveda and Siddha and naturopathy is growing big time in the West, particularly in Europe, very big. In India, of course, it's dying because they have to approve it for us to take it. Without their approval, we cannot take it. But we must understand the difference between allopathy and these other Indian systems. Right now, an Ayurvedic doctor is going to another medical college just like you go for 4 years or 5 years or whatever. So what he's learning is a downgraded medicine, downgraded understanding. An Ayurvedic doctor or one who wants to practice Ayurveda should not go to a four-year course. You have to invest your life in it, otherwise it won't happen. Traditionally, from childhood, they learn to feel the herbs, they learn to feel the people, the pulse and this and that. This is developing a certain intuition where we don't go by the symptoms that you're showing on your body right now. We don't see your temperature and say, this is what it is. We don't look at those symptoms. We learn to look much deeper into the system to identify what exactly is right and wrong with your system. This will take a different level of involvement. That involvement is missing right now. We're looking at things, if I do this much, I must get this job or I must get this place in the world. With this, these systems may not function very well. You must have heard this, the same medicine one doctor gives in Ayurveda and Siddha, the same medicine, in one person's hands it works very well, in another person's hands it doesn't work well because the person who gives it is as important as the medicine, because it's not working just by its chemical composition. The entire allopathic system is working out of chemical composition. Anyway, there is a danger that in the next 25 years, all medical colleges may have to close down because artificial intelligence will make diagnosis by itself and treat you by itself. Surgeries are all happening now, robotic surgeries are happening. Still human beings are needed because machines need to be upgraded. But in 25 years' time, even today, in United States, I know doctors. I saw a doctor whom I know very well. He is carrying an old BlackBerry, the first model that came, which is that thick and a huge capability. Every time any patient, whatever, he just goes there into his BlackBerry. I said, what are you looking in the phone and treating people? He said, no, Sadhguru, all my textbooks are here in this phone. I'm just looking and telling them. So if you can look, the phone can become smart enough now that it will tell by itself. If you just tell the symptoms to Alexa, she will tell you what you should do.
I'll say, I think this is in 2018, was it? 2019. Let's look at the picture up there. So, I watch a doctor on YouTube, Dr. Mike, and he also has kind of confirmed this a little bit, that there is a thing that doctors use for resources, for looking up stuff. Because obviously doctors just can't remember everything, The human body is extremely complicated. A lot of the symptoms are very similar. Like if you if you look at a lot of the symptoms for many of the diseases and sicknesses, it's all like the same. It's like, man, that's the reason why if you go to there's a joke about if you go to WebMD, it always goes straight to cancer. Because no matter what you have, it's like all the symptoms are the same. And I guess cancer may be all of it. I don't know. It's just kind of funny. It's like a meme. I was like, anytime you look, it's like I stubbed my toe. What's wrong with me? I got cancer. So I would say AI still kind of behind, but I wouldn't doubt it being getting there. But there is a database of disease and whatnot that doctors prescribe to, so they can look up and see if the symptoms matches, and they know what to look for. You still need a level of expertise to be able to narrow down what it is, because all the information about all diseases, I'm sure, is pretty much online. And if you think you can do it, I mean, good luck. You might get the wrong. You'd probably get it more wrong than right, because there's, again, like Sadhguru was saying, I believe in the last one, there's a certain level of expertise or things that tends to point in a general direction, but in actuality it's at a different direction. And I've seen a few cases like that when I watch medical stuff on YouTube, where they went through 3 different doctors, all thought the same thing. Then all of a sudden, one doctor saw the symptom earlier or read about it in a newspaper and says, what if it's this one? So they asked the right question, a question that was never asked before, because the person never brought it up. But it's like, okay, so they seen the symptoms, but none of them seems to be the case. But I did read one that seems to be very similar to this, but it was different. So they asked the question, have you been to South Africa or South America or Central America or wherever it was? I can't remember. And they said yes, and they said this could be it. And it was. So, diseases is very complicated. The human body is very complicated. And the biggest thing is patient needs to be able to talk to their doctors, like explain exactly what's going on, what new thing they tried, or where have they been, in the last 3 months or so that they can give a proper diagnosis. Because the doctor will ask you some questions, but it tends to be of the most common things. So the diagnosis with those 3 doctors, even though they're wrong, were right in terms of based on the information they've gotten. But obviously there's one question that they didn't ask is, have you traveled? Because these diseases all point to the right one, but it was the wrong answer. Even though all those diseases really did point to that, it was just not the one thing that they didn't ask would have shifted that to a different direction.
So, this form of symptomatic treatment may become irrelevant after some time, because you're just gathering data and processing it and giving an answer. This a machine will be able to do better than any human being, because it can process much faster and much better and not miss anything. So, it is time the young doctors who are coming up now should focus on how you should be able to look beyond the symptoms. This is what Ayurveda and Siddha is significant about. There was a yogi with whom I volunteered for some time for his medical camps that he used to have. It was like a festival. Okay, for everybody who comes to him, he has a joke to tell them, and it goes on like a festival. Simply something he will give and people are cured. Thousands of people will queue up for him every day. And he himself lived to be 106. So if somebody lives for 106 years of age, not in a geriatric state, fully active till the last day of his life, he must know something about health, isn't it? Hello?
Real quick on that one.
My great-grandmother lived to be 113, 113 years of age. I will tell you, this may sound absurd to you, but you must listen to this, because if you are not open, there'll be no new learning. Well, I saw her only after she's 100, but she was still very active. She was living all by herself in an open field. She built a small temple for herself, not for a god, for herself. She built a temple and she sat in it because she felt she deserves a temple. This is very common in India, especially women, older women, built small temples, they sat there and they served humanity in a different way, in their own way. So when we went there for vacations and all, she would come home. If you give her breakfast, she will take this and put it to the ants, to the squirrel, to the sparrows, everything. Most of the breakfast is gone like this. There are self-appointed advisors who look at this and say, you old woman, you don't eat anything, you will die. They all died. And she will simply sit there looking at these sparrows and ants eating, simply tears would be rolling from her eyes. And when somebody said, "You've not eaten?" She said, "I'm full." When I sometimes saw her like this and I asked, "What is this happening to you?" She would just laugh loudly and she would say, "Someday you will know." It took me over 25 years to know this, that your life is not nourished 100% by the food that you consume and things that you do. Life is a bigger phenomena than what you think in your head, much larger. Before you came, this cosmos was there, everything was working. After you and me are gone, still it'll be fine, isn't it? There is an intelligence beyond you. Don't immediately quantify it as God, this, that, because you're making a conclusion about things that you do not know. If you stay here, this is very important, if you live here clearly knowing you don't know a damn thing about anything, your intelligence will remain alert to everything. But you make conclusions, reading a book, listening to this and that nonsense, you say, "I know this, I know that, I know that." The moment you identify with your knowledge, you will become very small, because it doesn't matter how much you know, still what you know is a minuscule in this existence, isn't it? But our ignorance is boundless. If this is called as the intelligence of ignorance, if you always know that you do not know, your intelligence will remain super alert. Whether your body is awake or asleep, it will remain super alert. This is what a doctor must do, because I'm sorry to say such things, you may know medicine, you might have read all the books in the world, you might have treated many patients, but still, like she already asked, she had a first death face. Everything seems to be perfect, somebody will die in your hands. Everything looks like he's going to die, he will sit up tomorrow morning. You will see this happening, yes or no? So, there is intelligence beyond you and me, there's an intelligence which makes us happen, there's an intelligence which can make a mango into a human being. If you don't allow that to function within you, if you think everything is in your head, you will become a dumb doctor. You must allow the deeper intelligence within you to function.
Okay, I'm gonna pause the video here. So I'm gonna talk for just a little bit. Speaking about like people of old age, like they live past 100. I just kind of want to point out this one weird one. I remember seeing, I watched on YouTube where they pointed out the oldest people that have lived, at least that they know about. I can't remember what the oldest one was. I think 130 maybe. But I do remember one being either 120 or the 110s to 120 area. But what pointed this one out to me was this person drank Dr. Pepper and think that was the secret to living a long life. I'm like, you should not have lived that long drinking that much Dr. Pepper, but it's kind of crazy to drink something. Sodas in general are really bad for you. Generally speaking, if you drink every so often, it's not bad. Anything that you eat that's bad isn't bad. It's all about how much you consume of it. Like sometimes even things that are terribly worse for you, if you consume the smallest amount in 1 year's time, it will do nothing to you. Again, I'm not a doctor here, but generally speaking, it's all a matter of how much you consume of it. Like water is bad for you. If you drink like 58 gallons of it in like a second. But you can really drink too much water and you can starve your body of nutrients because you kind of urinate it out. But too much water is bad for you. Too much oxygen is bad for you too, even though that's what we need to live. You can't have I think you can't really have pure oxygen. It's not good, I believe. I remember hearing that. So obviously it's all a matter of how much. Ice cream is bad for you, but eating a little bit, not going to be bad for you. So anyways, yeah, this lady, 110, 120, somewhere around there. I remember watching a video of like I was just kind of curious who the oldest person was. And my gosh, how did this woman live so long drinking Dr. Pepper? I do not know. That's crazy. Again, it's a YouTube video. Is it true? It seems like it. There are what do you call it? Exceptional people out there, and and I think these doctors will find it very odd, and maybe people in general will see that people who smoke or have bad habits tend to live longer than people who don't smoke. That's not the true case, but it's when you see someone with a bad habit and they're living for a very long time, it just sticks out to you. It's like, no, you should have died like 50 years ago. How you living this long? I don't know. Maybe sheer will of luck. I don't know, or sheer will itself. But yeah, there are exceptional people out there, and it's genetics as well for sure. Anyways, hopefully one more video, maybe two, and this will be the end of this one. So anyways, if you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, the sign down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.